drama queens and heroes acting out there on a silver screen. Come grab a seat, popcorn is on me.
Camera speed.
Sound production, take one.
Hello, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. I'm really happy to be here and happy to be joined with my good buddy, Mr. Douglas Davidson. I feel like we've been trying to get on the air for like years, and it's only been like just a few minutes, but it's so good to see you, man. I'm glad to have you back. Always glad to have you back. And we got a lot to talk about. When I reached out to you, I said, really want you to talk about The Creator, which is a new film that's getting a lot of good love. I wanted to get you to talk about that, but also maybe some anticipated films for the fall that'll be coming out. So you've got your list, and you were like, do they have to be FYC? Because some of mine are not FYC. And I said, it's all right.
Not at all.
It's all right.
Not at all.
So, but before we get there, I did get some non-viewer mail, and I want to read that. So this non-viewer mail comes from Ross Rigi from Lawndale, North Carolina. And Ross says, Dear Mr. Manning, and I appreciate it, Mr. Manning. That's pretty cool. Dear Mr. Manning, if you are ever unprepared or if you ever feel like you don't have anything to talk about, how do you make a show happen? Sincerely, Ross. Ross, thanks for that question. And the answer to that is I invite people like Douglas Davidson on, and I just ask him a lot of questions. So there you go. There's the answer. If I'm unprepared or I really don't want to talk about anything that I've seen, I invite somebody else on to talk about some other stuff. So there you go. Thanks for that non-viewer mail. You can email us at info@C19.TV. And we do appreciate you spending time with us right here on C19 TV and also through WGWG. Well, Douglas, you and I have talked quite a bit over the years about a lot of different things, and we've seen art house films together. We've seen blockbusters together. We just spent time just hanging out and enjoying each other's company. And I got to tell you, when I saw the trailer for The Creator, I was like, man, that just looks like one of those epic big screen kind of films that you really need to see on the big screen, and you don't need to watch it on an iPhone. So give me your thoughts and give me your feedback on this film that's getting some good love.
Well, it's interesting that you said your reaction from just seeing the trailer. I didn't watch any, and it was by sheer accident. I sometimes watch trailers for films that I'm interested in, and strangely enough, with Gareth Edwards' work, I haven't been the biggest fan. I liked Monsters, which came out in 2010, but his approach for Godzilla, which I think was 2014, didn't really land with me. Rogue One, I'm one of the few among my colleagues that is not a fan. So when I heard about this, I know, it strikes a lot of people weird. I have a hard time investing in that film for a lot of reasons. We won't get into that now. But with this film, I was curious. And I liked some of what I'd seen in just the still shots, but I went in pretty much blind. And what I found myself impressed by is that the easiest way to describe this movie without any spoilers whatsoever is it's a several $1 million protest film. It's an anti-war movie.
Wow.
And that is mostly what struck me with the use of artificial intelligence as a very easy way to explore war, the war machine, if you will, as well, without having a specific enemy that might complicate the way that one processes or engages with the material. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, the general premise of the film is that there's a war going on between humanity and artificial intelligence. It's split between just general robots that are run by artificial intelligence, something that is in between called simulants, which they do describe as more human than human, so shout out to Blade Runner. I'm sure William Gibson got a huge laugh out of that one. For our cyberpunk fans, they'll get that reference. But anyway, that there's this war going on, and in order for the United States to feel like they are going to make a decisive big move in the battle against AI, they go and pull out of retirement a former intelligence officer played by John David Washington. He's by the name of Joshua. And they go, you have information from your past that we need your help, and they give him some personal incentive to go through with this mission. And so he does, and through that, we meet all these other characters. He goes back to places he hasn't been in several years, and while the script itself follows a path that you've seen before, the computer-generated work by Industrial Light and Magic is some of the best I've seen this year. It is virtually seamless. The way that you can't tell the difference between Ken Watanabe, who he's a simulant, so he's got where his ear would be a giant hole and some other machinery. It is seamless with his skin.
Wow. Wow.
It is remarkable. There's only a few moments where there might be something that is computer generated with something natural, clearly on location, that you go, oh, okay, I can sort of tell where there's a difference in spacing or everything else. But from top to bottom, this is a film you've seen before, but it's in a package you haven't seen before, and it comes to address a philosophy that you may not have considered. And honestly, as the more I sat with it, the more I liked it, the more thoughtful I found it, the more interesting I found it, but more importantly, just because it was one of, I believe it was 2020 that this film came out, Spike Lee's The Five Bloods. Yeah. I think this film, the creator, would make a wonderful double feature with The Five Bloods.
Really?
Particularly because of the approach that Edwards and screenwriter Chris Weitz take in exploring war. Specifically the fact that it all takes place either in the United States or in what's called New Asia. And it's made up of where they shot, which is Nepal, Vietnam, Indonesia, and a couple Cambodia, and a couple other places. So when you think of war happening in those areas, and then you apply the type of war that's going on in this film, and you apply some of the history in those locations, everything becomes really loaded and honestly really fascinating. Wow. So while there's some very expected stuff to happen in terms of emotional beats, for me they landed really, really well.
So it's something you went into without any kind of background, and you came out
no baggage,
really appreciating what you saw.
Absolutely.
So talk a little bit about the cinematography and the score, if you would.
Absolutely. Now, first of all, before getting into those two things, one thing I want to mention: this screening that I was invited to was in IMAX. If you are a theater fan and you're comfortable going to the theater, if you can do the IMAX, absolutely do that. It'll help you get the scope of everything that is going on in the movie. So definitely theatrical if you feel comfortable doing it. In terms of the cinematography, there was actually two cinematographers that did the work for this. Offhand, unfortunately, I don't remember their names. But what was beautiful about this is the way in which they made the American locations, which I believe were Los Angeles primarily. This is Los Angeles of 2065. It was very concrete, very white, very devoid of life and energy, whereas everything that was shot in the areas of New Asia were just abundant with life. They were beautiful and gorgeous. There were sunsets and sunrises. There was a sense of life living there, which is part of, for me, what worked with the philosophies and the themes that this film was exploring. So just a beautifully shot film that it's almost the fact that you know that there's so much CGI going on in this movie, but it doesn't feel like a CGI film, and it looks so beautiful and grounded. It's magic. It's the reason why those of us that love movies love movies.
Wow.
Is because you really you find yourself just being blown away by the craftsmanship. Now, of course, that's you and we see movies differently than general audiences. So, so I was looking at it through that lens as well. And the score by Hans Zimmer is really lovely. I haven't listened to it since the theater, but it does a wonderful job of incorporating its location in terms of it's not your typical Hans Zimmer wah score. It actually really works to convey the emotion that is intended throughout the film.
Wow.
So while I wouldn't call it my favorite Hans Zimmer score, but it still very much does the job. For me, the cinematography and the special effects are really what set this wow factor, and then you get the themes and exploration of ideas from the script, and I found it really moving. I totally see where there are some folks that did not connect with it, or they went, it's so derivative that, there were no surprises, no whatever. But I still found myself falling for the illusion. So
Wow.
That's me.
Well, and films like this too, that are built on kind of the special effects aspect, war films or whether it's anti-war films, sound design and sound mixing really has to rise to the top. And everything I've seen and read says that is definitely the case for this particular film, The Creator.
I would absolutely agree, particularly because as a film that is not glorifying war in any way, it's really not. And there's some scenes that I'd love to mention that would just spoil some details, so I'm not getting into it. But the sound is not meant to rattle you. It's not a war film in that Saving Private Ryan, where it's trying to rattle you to your bones in that opening sequence. It's not 1917, where you're supposed to be on the edge of your seat. But at the same time, the way that the sound design works in this, it may not be trying to do that, but it wants to make sure that you feel it too. So it is not action without emotional connection. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. The film is The Creator. Any final comments you want to make sure you share about the messages, the cast, anything else relating to the film before we give your report card grade and take a quick intermission?
I would simply say that if what I've said about it is the most you know, don't look up anything else. Go engage with it however you want to engage with it. I will tell you that from what I'd heard from other folks, they were expecting just a straight-up action film. And for me, being me, I enjoy something that makes me think, makes me feel, and this did both of those things.
Awesome.
So while I would agree there are some aspects where even I was sitting in the theater going, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. But the way that they made me feel about it when they got to those moments is what helped elevate it a little bit. It for lack of a better term, saved it in that regard. So I would give this an A.
Okay, solid A rating for the film The Creator. You can find that in theaters. Joined by Douglas Davidson from Elements of Madness, president of the North Carolina Film Critics Association, and a recurring guest right here on Meet Me at the Movies. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for joining us. We're going to take a quick intermission. We're going to come back and talk about some of Douglas's films that he's most anticipating over the course of the next couple of months or so right here on Meet Me at the Movies. Stick around.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a
Education is our most powerful tool to improve and change our world. Hi, I'm Rhonda Benfield, your host for School Matters. Join me for a new program every other week with information from and about the students and staff of Cleveland County Schools. Discover what our schools are doing to challenge students and help them reach their full potential. You can catch us on Spectrum Cable Channel 19 or stream us live on C19.TV.
Hi, I'm Nikki Bliss Carroll, your host for Cleveland Connections, the show that explores what's happening at Cleveland Community College. Join us as we sit down with members of faculty and staff to discuss programs of study, upcoming events, and other exciting campus news. We'll have a new show for you each month on C19 TV, or you can stream us online at C19.TV. Tune in and connect with Cleveland Community College on Cleveland Connections.
Hey, I'm David Allen, back as Armchair Quarterback host for 2023.
I'm Guy Suttle from C19 TV Sports.
And I'm Rob Rook from KTCBroadcasting.com.
What's in store on the gridiron for 2023? Each week we look at all 4 Cleveland County High School football teams, Burns, Crest, Kings Mountain, and Shelby. We will look at what happened the week before and look ahead at what's coming up this week.
And we'll also discuss ACC, SEC, and Gardner-Webb college football.
And of course, the NFL and those Carolina Panthers.
So don't miss another great season of football right here on Armchair Quarterback on C19 TV and online at C19.TV.
Won't you come and meet me at the movies? Won't you come and watch a flick?
Hello, welcome back to Meet Me at the Movies, hanging out with Mr. Douglas Davidson from Elements of Madness and president of the North Carolina Film Critics Association. You can find that. What's the North Carolina Film Critics website? What's it? ncfilmcritics.org? Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, ncfilmcritics.org and elementsofmadness.com. There you go. So that's how you can find Douglas and his amazing work and the stuff that we're involved in. Well, man, before the break, we talked about The Creator. You gave that an A rating on the Meet Me at the Movies report card. And let's dive into some films that you're looking forward to in whatever order you want to make sure you get to. So I'd say, the top films and kind of go down that list. Films that you're looking forward to over the next month or so, or 2 or 3.
Well, because we were talking about Gareth Edwards before the break, I may as well jump straight to this one. This past year, I am the sort that if I want to cover something and it's not the first of a thing, I want to try and learn as much, watch as much, or whatever I can to be prepared to cover that. I don't like to go in blind if it's part of a series. And earlier this year, without getting into the rigmarole, I ended up watching Shin Godzilla, which is a phenomenal film. I finally caught up with it, highly recommend it. But because of that, I finally watched the original Godzilla. And now I've learned that later this year, last reported it's December 1st in the United States. I believe it's November in Japan. But there's going to be a new Godzilla movie called Godzilla Minus One. This is directed by Takashi Yamazaki. It is a film in which literally right after World War II ends, Godzilla attacks. So that's why it's -1, because Japan is already at 0 post-World War II. And so what happens now with Godzilla attacking? And academically, I've always understood that Godzilla has come to represent Japan post-World War II in having dealt with the bombs that fell and how they were dealing with reconstruction and building themselves back up. And throughout the years, different Godzilla stories, some of them have been just kaiju movies where you have Godzilla fighting Mothra, Godzilla fighting Ghidorah, whatever, King Ghidorah. But then you have something like Shin Godzilla, where Godzilla is more representative of let's explore a slow bureaucracy. And how do we know how to deal with natural disasters, how do we deal with fighting a god? So with Godzilla -1, I'm intrigued by this film, because what does it look like? How do you respond as a country when you're already as low as you can possibly be? And so I'm in awe, sort of, from the footage that's already been released, of how it's very, seems to be replicating the look of the original Godzilla in that regard, and just wondering how much of this film is going to be like that first Godzilla, in which it's going to be an exploration of the people, and not so much big monster, how do we fight it? Or is it our savior, as the modern MonsterVerse has turned it into? So I'm very curious about that, and that comes out December 1st.
Awesome. So is in the movie Shin Godzilla, do you only see Godzilla's shin, or do you ever get to see the full
thing? Shin is actually a word that translates from Japanese, because I had to look this up, to either new or God. And there's actually 4 films, they're not connected at all, But there's Shin Godzilla, then there was Shin Ultraman, which came out on home video earlier this year, Shin Kamen Rider, which is streaming on Amazon Prime Video right now for you subscribers, and Evangelion 3.33 plus 1.0 Thrice Upon a Time. I hope I got that title right.
Wow, it's impressive.
Yeah, which is coming out on home video October from Shout Factory. So those are the 4 Shin movies, not connected, but they are meant to mean new, and this was a new Godzilla story, but an actual new Godzilla story, Godzilla -1, December 1st.
Awesome. Well, I'm always drawn to monster flicks, especially monster flicks like the Godzilla one. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So what else is on your list you want to make sure you get a chance to cover? That's on your. Hey, I got to check this out sometime when it arrives in the next few months.
Okay, so I found out about this movie yesterday, and I mentioned this to you before the recording, but I have to mention this. Okay. Coming out on November 10th. It's apparently premiering, I believe, at Beyond Fest, which is going on in LA right around now. It's called It's a Wonderful Knife. You heard that right. It's directed by Tyler McIntyre, and it's written, I forget, unfortunately, Michael Kennedy. There we go. Michael Kennedy, who wrote the screenplay for the movie Freaky, and Tyler McIntyre, who directed the fantastic Tragedy Girls from a couple years ago. But It's a Wonderful Knife is a horror/holiday movie in which a final girl has survived a serial killer's attack, and she's the hero of the town, but a year later, her life's gone nowhere, and she's down in the dumps, and apparently she wonders, how my life would be better if I weren't born, right? Transported to a parallel universe, serial killer is on the loose, and she has to deal with that in order to figure out a way to come home. And if it weren't for the fact that it's being directed by the same person who did Tragedy Girls, if not for it's written by the person who did Freaky, I wouldn't be interested in this.
Mm-hmm.
But a horror holiday movie, let's do it.
Exactly. I'm right there with you, man. I'm right there with you. We got our taste of one of those last year. I think it was last year with
Violent Night.
Yes, Violent Night. Oh man, yes. I that's one that I will definitely be going back to because man, that was so much dang fun. So that film is called It's a Wonderful Knife. Knife, and that is coming out in November, we think.
Yep. Last checked, it is slated to come out November 10th. From RLJE, if I remember correctly. They tend to do in theater and also on VOD and digital, so keep your eye out. That may happen. Although it may also be released in conjunction with Shudder, that streaming service. So if it is theaters first, it may then go to Shudder before everything else. One other one I want to make sure to mention, which is going to be really odd for those of you out there who have ever listened to me, who've ever read my work, who know me personally. I'm a giant chicken. So the fact that I have one horror film on this list is a little weird, but there's another film I want to mention, if only because the debut feature film was so impressive that when I heard that this creator had another story coming, I absolutely had to track it down. This is a movie called Cuckoo by Tillman Singer. This is the writer-director of a film from 2018 called Loose. That film was about a young lady who shows up at a police precinct and ends up in a battle for her soul against a demon. This one, I don't know anything about. I don't have a clue. It's not dated yet. The most I could find out about this is that the distributor Mubi is attached, and they have a tendency, like they did Decision to Leave last year, which was absolutely incredible. Mm-hmm. So if they're attached to this, I'm even more excited. But Dan Stevens is in this. Jessica Henwick is in this, and then Hunter Schafer. I'm not familiar with Hunter's work. Apparently they're in Euphoria, but I know Jessica, I know Dan, and they sometimes get in with the weird stuff. So I'm in with this. And again, it's a movie called Cuckoo, which likely is going to be, if Singer's previous work is any indication. So that is a film that if you don't know anything about it and you're curious about it, look up Loose. and then get ready for this one.
Well, let me ask you this question, man. So for films like this that you are deciding, okay, I'm not going to get any deeper than looking at maybe the synopsis or who's, the cast and crew. What is it that appeals to you about these kind of films? What is it that makes you say, okay, I want to check that out?
That's a great question. Sometimes it's something small. Sometimes it'll be like I like that director or I like that writer, where it's literally just, I know their prior work, and so I have a sense of their rhythm, I have a sense of their tone or whatever else, and I go, okay, I don't need to know anymore. I'll go check that out, good or bad or indifferent. Other times, it'll be something that has a style or a feeling, like with Godzilla Minus One, where I don't really know anything about it, but because of all these other films and these different approaches, I want to see what this one is going to do. Or in the case of, and not to get into another one on my list, but there is a film coming out, released by G-Kids here in the United States. It's already been released in Japan. It's a manga adaptation called Blue Giant. And the reason why I'm interested in this one isn't because I've read the manga. It's a jazz story. And I've listened to the score, and the score is amazing. I heard about it, and G-Kids has a tendency to put out some really interesting stuff in the United States, stuff that's been released from Spain, Japan, Indonesia, a couple of different places, China, and films that don't always get big attention. So I'm always curious when G-Kids put something out. But I heard about this movie, and I went, all right, they did a basketball movie earlier this year, and that was fantastic. Let me go check out the music, if it's a jazz movie. And it's so good. Because it's already been released in Japan, the score is already available, so I just listen to snippets through Spotify, because I don't have an account with them. And so now I'm interested, and it's only screening for 2 nights in October 8th and October 9th, if you can find a screening. But it's literally about a couple of guys that are getting together, and they want to form a jazz band. And so in addition to the performers, they've also got actual musicians doing the music. At least that's my inference from the names in the trailer.
Yeah.
But so for a movie like Blue Giant, where I go, I haven't read the manga, I'm not familiar with this, I don't know any of the performers, for me it's a question of, well, I like jazz, so let me go see. Oh, that sounds really good. Now I want to see it within the context of the movie itself.
Yeah, awesome.
So that's kind of how I make my determinations. And in particular with a movie like It's a Wonderful Knife, I go, well, Freaky is irreverent, and Tragedy Girls is brilliantly subversive. I want to see what they do with a time travel holiday staple. So that's great. There's that curiosity.
That's perfect.
It could end up being too gory for me, which is a problem, which is why I have no thoughts on the Saw movies, but but
awesome.
That's sort of how I make that determination.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate that feedback. And if anyone out there is interested in finding your work, they can check you out, elementsofmadness.com. Douglas Davidson, our guest right here on Meet Me at the Movies. Appreciate you sharing your insight and your thoughts on items of interest for you during the fall season. We look forward to having you back in the not too distant future, man. Always good to see you, buddy. And take care.
Likewise.
And just remember, technology loves you. AI loves you. AI loves you. So for everyone out there, even send us an email, info@c19.tv. We will respond, or we will make sure that we pretend we respond. And for Douglas Davidson and for the entire cast and crew right here at C19 and through WGWG, if you're listening to the radio and podcast version, for this week's Meet Me at the Movies, that's a wrap.
Yeah.